Erev Tov Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and guys, just want to kind of bring you up to date on some things that are going on. Prime Minister Netanyahu is asked to meet with President Putin over a new approach, according to Israel National News, to revise the coordination over the fighting over Syria. I think that's the right approach. I wish President Barack Obama would have done more of this in the very beginning instead of snubbing President Putin over the whole Syrian crisis and trying to defeat ISIS when President Putin was doing a very good job instead. The United States, President Obama and his administration took the opposite policy because their whole purpose was to topple Bashar al-Assad in the first place. They did not want President Putin coming along and helping out Bashar al-Assad. They were hoping that he would just keep the other cheek turned while they totally annihilated this man's government, which is a shame in itself. And that's, with everything aside, guys, we know that prophecy about Damascus becomes a ruinous heap. I realize that. I realize these things are going to happen. Prophecies sometimes are given in such a way to where God knows it's going to happen and the prophet prophesies. Look at Ben-Hadad, for example. Elisha actually liked Ben-Hadad as far as a king because he knew that God had used Ben-Hadad as far as in bringing judgment. And when the king fell sick, the Syrian king at that time, he sent word to the prophet Elisha to know whether or not he would recover from his illness. And the prophet sends word back to the messenger there that he will recover, but yet he will die. And the messenger thought that was kind of ironic. Well, it was because the prophet knew that the messenger was going to kill Ben-Hadad. And he wept over it, not over the fact of Ben-Hadad passing away, although Ben-Hadad had respect to Elisha the prophet, but because he also knew the evils that the man that would be his successor would do to the children of Israel and would slaughter and kill the women and everything else and just be a brutal, brutal man. And in modern days today, we do know that there is tremendous prophecies, if we have brought them out through Micah chapter 7, where the Syrians would become refugees, never to return home again. We see things in Nahum about Nineveh, Mosul, as we're be speaking about here in just a moment here. They would also flee from the city. We see that Damascus becomes a ruinous heap. We know these prophecies are there. But at the same time, we realize too, there are still children. There are still people that will be dying in these wars. And I think that regardless of what happens, let's stand on the right side. Let's stand before God to know that we are a voice for innocence. And I think that's what's really important. Like the Israeli woman that recently brought together the vigil right there on Yom Kippur, while we're right here during our high holidays right now, in Sukkot, etc. But in Yom Kippur, she called out for the prayer of the nation to pray for the children that are crying and weeping and mourning, and the mothers and the children that have lost mothers. She rallied the nation for prayer for these people. That's the right side to be on in all these conflicts, regardless of which side is which, whether it be the Russians cause the fatalities, the Americans cause the fatalities. It doesn't matter which side is which. There's innocent lives being lost all the time when there is a war. And that's what's the tragedy of this all. Be Ukraine, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Israel, whatever the case may be, is human beings and their souls are being lost. Same with the issues in America, etc., everywhere. All right, let's move on though to other news here as we kind of cover these things here. There has been an assassination of a man that is, they call him Motorola. He is Arseny Pavlov. He was a commander in the separatists, the DPR's defense ministry there in Ukraine. In fact, the defense ministry is now calling it a declaration of war. Since his assassination today, he was killed by IED that was placed inside of an elevator, I assume where he lived at. When he got in the elevator, the lift exploded. It killed the man. And now they're bringing about retaliation. From what I understand, that tonight, it's not Ukraine starting the offensive. This time it was the DPR launching a lot of strikes backs against the Ukrainian forces there for the assassination of one of what they called their war hero there. I do know, and I have to say alleged because I haven't had a chance to be able to follow up on this, but Petro Poroshenko had promised a retaliation and an assassination of one of the members for the deaths, from what I understand, 15 of the prisoners of war that died in their hands. And this is also kind of lets you know, that's what the article says here in Russian, that Petro Poroshenko about a month prior had already warned of a retaliation for the deaths of the 15 prisoners of war that happened while they were in the care of the Donetsk People's Republic, or Donbass People's Republic there. Anyhow, again, I have to say alleged from my point because I have not been able to look to see if this was true before coming on the air tonight. So it may very well be true. I don't know the case. But nonetheless, Petro Poroshenko did so. They did get down inside of behind enemy lines, so to speak, for Kiev, and they carried out the attack, which no doubt makes the DPR pretty nervous to know that they were actually able to carry out an attack inside of their own territory. So continuing on, let's move on as well. In Mosul, we reported last night that the attack had been launched. Some people had questioned. They said, Steve, it's not happened from what we can see, where we're not seeing it in the mainstream media in the United States. I wanted to let you know where my source was for that. It was on Iraqi television. It says operation to capture Mosul in Iraq from ISIS has started. This was according to Iraqi TV. I assumed that the air campaign began as well, but from what I understand, it was not the air campaign. Even the television footage shows the tanks firing at Mosul. From what I understand now, in looking at some of the updates on this, they were doing this to soften up the different ISIS forces inside of Mosul, but the actual full-fledged air assault had not begun. But they did begin to drop leaflets, etc. But that's what they were saying there. Also, we know that the French as well have been involved in this, and they had already started artillery attacks as well. Sorry, get this turned down here real quick. But the French as well are involved in it. They were getting the go-ahead. And again, as the French are saying, it was to soften up the targets. You can see the black haze over the sky. That's from the burning oil that they have been burning. But the French got the go-ahead, and now they were firing off 155 millimeter howitzers there into Mosul to weaken up their targets as well. Continuing on, other articles as well. International Business Times, U.S. military has started shelling Mosul, says Peshmerga commander of Omar Hassan, claimed U.S. howitzers had started bombing the northern Iraqi city, according to what they were reporting as well. As we move on in other news there, another thing that was kind of interesting to me, especially since we had heard that the U.S. was going to allow 9,000 ISIS members escape into Syria, which if that were to be the case, it would just kind of show even more so that Obama is definitely supporting the ISIS militants. But according to this report here on SMMS, Special Monitoring Mission to Syria, it says Iraqi military to stop ISIS escape to Syria is what they're saying now. A senior commander of the Iraqi forces said that his forces shall block the escape path for ISIS terrorists who are now surrounded in Mosul to Syria. The Iraqi forces spokesman Ahmad al-Assadi said that the country's forces will not allow ISIS to flee to Syria. So it's a good thing for President Bashar al-Assad. And speaking of President Bashar al-Assad, I wanted you to see this clip here. This is actually on a channel that supposedly is part of the Syrian channel, from what I understand. And in this interview here with a Russian television news anchor, he is asked about what role Turkey is playing now that they are in his country. And I think you ought to hear what President Bashar al-Assad has to say about Turkey.
Like nothing happened. What's your opinion about the role of Turkey in this war and about this intervention?
If we start from today, it's invasion.
Invasion.
This incursion is invasion, whether a small part or large part of the Syrian territory is invasion against international law, against the moral, against the sovereignty of Syria. But what do the Turks want from this invasion, regardless of the mask that they wear to cover their real intentions? They wanted to whitewash their real intention that they used to support ISIS and
You
are
think
Muslim.
they don't support now?
No, they still support, but they came, they say we are fighting ISIS. We're going to
It's
have...
ridiculous. When
Sorry?
they tell, it's ridiculous. When they
course it's
tell
right.
we are fighting with ISIS, they made ISIS.
Exactly, they made ISIS, they supported ISIS, they give them all the logistical support and allow them to sell our oil through their border, through their territory, with the participations of Erdogan's son and his coterie. They all of them were involved in the relation with ISIS.
So
All of them
as
involved.
President Bashar al-Assad is saying here, if you were able to hear this okay, he said it's an invasion. No matter which way you look at it, it's an invasion. And he said they're trying to put a mask on. They're wanting to whitewash their record from supporting ISIS. And of course, he also goes to say that they created ISIS. Well, we know that the United States Obama administration is the one that created ISIS, but no doubt in collaboration with President Erdogan. And he also mentioned that it was Erdogan's son that was doing the selling of Syrian oil going back through his country. So he even knows who was guilty of stealing the oil from Syria. We do know that it was going in through Turkey to begin with. That was proven by Russia. Clearly, the evidence through the drones, etc., that they were able to document that, as well as all the special reports that Russia has done that clearly identifies that by documentation that they were keeping there, that they were actually selling the oil through Turkey, and Turkey was selling it into European nations. These were the low buyers there, making a fortune, because the gas pumps, of course, in Europe never went down at all. So somebody was definitely making a fortune off of that. And according to President Bashar al-Assad, it was Erdogan's son that was profiting from doing this particular act. But again, President Bashar al-Assad is calling Turkey's presence in his country an invasion. And I have always held to the fact that the coup that Erdogan did was staged by the United States in order to be able to get the Turkish forces into Syria, so that when the United States would take and launch an attack on Bashar al-Assad directly through an air campaign, that they would then have the Turkish military already there and ready to go in order to be able to take over the country as soon as they felt like that Assad would fall. That's been my thought from the beginning, and I can't say that I've changed it since then. Anyway, before we close, let me just mention one other thing too. The man that actually had posted the video about Rick Warren, we had mentioned in our broadcast last night about Rick Warren, and I called him brother, and it was a different Rick Warren. And a lot of people made the mistake thinking that I'm speaking about the Rick Warren of Saddleback Church in California, but it's actually a friend of mine called Rick A. Warren. His middle name has an A in it on Facebook there, that were friends that had sent me the information about Mosul being under attack, and that was the Iranian television news broadcast that was going on. But at any rate, there was a brother that had made a video saying that I was now involved with Rick Warren and calling him brother, etc. And he did come and he apologized publicly for that. And I wanted to say I was very thankful that he did that. And we are sorry as well that we had to make a video immediately to counter what had been brought out. I knew that once he realized that it was wrong, I felt confident that he would take it down anyway. But to make sure that you understand why, if the brother happens to listen to this tonight, brother, completely forgiven, because I realized you were not the only one. Other than the fact that you'd made the video, a lot of people felt like that. There's people that actually said they would never listen to me again and left. I have no idea if they'll ever come back again or not. But a lot of people just misunderstood because I didn't make it clear. And at the moment, I wasn't even thinking about the Rick Warren of Saddleback Church in California. The Rick Warren I know lives in North Carolina, and totally different guy altogether. And you have to remember, there's a lot of people with the same names. If you have the name John Smith, believe me, there's thousands and thousands of John Smiths. Warren is a very well-known name, and Rick is also a known name. And in fact, if you were to Google it, just as far as names, there is quite a few people with the name Rick Warren or Richard Warren, etc. So, but at any rate, we had to make the video also, not just because the brother that had made the video. We know that goes like wildfire once my name is attached to a video that I did something that was wrong. but as well for the sake of so many people that were listening, that if I didn't address it, then they would not know. Once we, though, get to a place where we know enough people have actually been able to hear and note that this was corrected, then we will actually move our video off as well, because I don't want this to be up there any longer. It needs to be done and be dealt with and completely done. And also, from what I understood, there was a lot of people that were very harsh on this man, and I appreciate people sticking up for me, but always remember, do it in love. Do it in love. Always remember the person, you never know, person may not have known, may not have, they no doubt, which in his case here, he even publicly apologizes, so I know he didn't mean to. But my wife even noted to me that he had said that he would unsubscribe, and I didn't want him to do something like that. The only thing that we had to do is, it's like damage control. You have to let the people know what really is going on, and so that if the video goes crazy everywhere, you know, then the people would know that no, it was not true, because there's no telling how many people watch it before he was able to take it down. So anyway, we love you, brother, and we thank you for making that stand and what you did to take the time to apologize as well, and hope you'll come back. So anyway, and all the rest, I know many of you as well said, you know, sent me your sentiments as well, that you're sorry, you didn't mean to, you had the same impression as well, and that's why I had to make the video as well, for the sake of the other people too, that they would know that no, it is a different guy altogether. Anyway, God bless you all, have a great evening, and talk to you tomorrow. Shalom.